Good afternoon. I'm Kay from the School of Electrical Engineering and Telecommunications. What I'm going to talk today is a little bit different from the previous speakers. Because I'm an electrical engineer, so I look into the problem from the system perspective. First, I will summarize some of the existing challenges for the grid connection of large-scale renewables, especially for the PV, and then move to some of the opportunities for electric vehicles. So personally, I think the PV can power the electric vehicle, and also the electric vehicle can power the PV. I think 2019 is one of the most difficult year for Australia. First, this is one of the most hottest year in the history, with the mean temperatures 2 to 3 degrees above average. And also, this is one of the driest year because the mean rainfalls is 40% below the average. But for the renewable, I think it's a remarkable year because the investment for the large-scale renewables is almost double than that of the 2018. So if we can this number for the current generation mix, so we can see roughly around 78% of the electricity was generated from the fossil fuels. It's quite reasonable because the fossil fuels is still one of the cheapest way of power generation. Renewable makeup is the remaining 22%. So one of the sharp increases for the wind, because the wind power generation increased roughly around 7% to become the largest renewable power generation, which is contributing 10%. And the remaining 12% is made up by the PV, biomass, and the other forms. So we can see this is one of the remarkable years when it's compared to the previous years. And also, because of the government policies, we're going to have larger number of carbon-intensive solar power generations going to be retired in the next few years. And this generation is going to be replaced with like large-scale power generations, renewables, and distributed energy resources. So, and this kind of transition going to offer many opportunities, especially for the developers and the EPC contractors. And also, but in the meanwhile, they experience many challenges due to the complexity of the system and network. That's I'm going to talk about. So this is just one example of current generation connection inquiries to the Transgrid. Transgrid is one of the local transmission network service provider in New South Wales. So the Transgrid keep receiving generation connection inquiries of the projects at different stages of development across the New South Wales. So as we can see in these diagrams, especially in the north part, for wind and solar, this is the already committed and also the proposed generations. So we can find for the wind, there is roughly around 4.5 gigawatts. But for the solar, 9.5 gigawatts. But for the available capacity, we only have 800 megawatts. But when we look at the other parts of the New South Wales, like southwest, southern, and southeast New South Wales, the available capacity is equals to 0 megawatts. What does that mean? That means the only small fraction of this proposed generator going to be connected to our grid if there is no upgrade of the network. There are lots of issues. So one of the main issues we call system strength. Personally, I will consider system strength as one of the key indicators of the system of the system to maintain the stable operation when it's subject to a disturbance. So the lower system strength, the weak the grid gonna be. So that's two main issues. The system strength issues were first identified by the AEMO in 2016, which is 3 weeks before the blackouts. And after blackouts, system strength requirement has been incorporated in the national electricity rules. And we have updated national electricity rules almost every 2 weeks. So that means it's become very harder to connect new generator to the grid. So why the system strength is quite important? As I mentioned, when it's compared with the stronger grid, the weaker grid might show more issues, like the voltage issues. Voltage may dip deeper, and it requires much longer time to recover. And when we have the renewable generators connected to a weaker grid, we have more issues. Because the renewable generator, one of the key advantages of renewable generator is these are the powertronics interface devices. They can respond very quickly to any kind of disturbance when we have in the grid. But sometimes this kind of fast response capability was translated into undamaged voltage oscillations. That's the reason why there are 5 very large solar farms in the western Victoria. The output of these 5 solar farms was slashed by half due to the network issues. So these are the technical issues. If we look at the issues from the financial aspects, the long-term contract, especially for the power purchase agreement, dropped from $90 per megawatt hour in 2014 to roughly around $50 to $45 per megawatt hour in 2019. That's a huge drop. Another reason is the IMO applies the margin loss factor, as Professor Jordan mentioned. So personally, I consider this as discount. The lower the number below the magic number 1, the bigger the discount. So these are the other issues for the grid connection renewables. So what are the optional solutions? So these are the solutions proposed by the network service providers. First, we need to upgrade our network. But it takes longer time, 3 years, 5 years to upgrade networks. Everything goes to the transmission distribution networks. Another option is the developer have to install a synchronous condenser, which is the rotating blocks. And the size and the location of the synchronous condenser is determined by the network service providers. The other options like rollback schemes or reduced ratings, we just limit the power generations of the whole solar farms. But the last option is battery storage. So the reason I want to mention the battery storage because I put a table here. This is from the New South Wales Emerging Energy Programs, which is $75 million projects to support the integration of the renewables. So there are 2 streams. The first stream we call pre-investment studies. There are 4 out of 10 projects focused on the battery storage. And the next stream is capital projects. There are 10 out of 19 projects. They want to use battery storage to solve these issues. So after we summarize the existing challenges of the utility scale renewable power projects, so what are the opportunities for the electric vehicle? So personally, I think the electric vehicle as a battery storage, or can say it's a mobile battery storage. It's a battery on the wheels. According to the latest forecast by the International Renewable Energy agencies, we're going to have more than enough batteries in electric vehicle by the year 2050. So what does that mean? If we don't look at this number from the transportation perspective, we look at these issues from the system perspective. That means we have massive energy storage capacity, which we can use to support our grid. And according to their study, most of the cars are parked 90% of the time, and the battery is connected to the grid via smart chargers. That means we not only have enough capacity, in the meanwhile, we're going to have lots of flexibilities to provide service to our grid. Like we can do like load shiftings, we can do primary, secondary voltage reserve, we can do arbitrary frequency regulations. So these are the services which are required by the grid, which are dominated by the renewable energies. So these are the opportunities. And also another opportunity I want to mention is we call it mobile charger stations. If you drive a Tesla in the US during the Christmas time or the New Year, it takes 1 hour, 2 hours to charge your electric vehicles. So what are the solutions to solve this problem? The existing solution is like we can put more charging ports at the charging stations. It takes time, sometimes it's very costly, and we impose the impacts to our grid. So another option is we call it mobile charger stations. We put a very big battery on a truck. We can charge the battery on a wind farm or solar farm. Then this kind of charging facilities can be transported somewhere we need it. We just remove it when it's no longer needed. So this is one of the solutions. Another solution I want to mention is battery swapping technologies. I just want to share one of the experiences I had recently in China. I was invited to one of the testing drive by one of the EV manufacturers in China. So we drive electric vehicles from Beijing to Shanghai, roughly around 1,500 kilometers. It was a very exciting trip. I was very worried in the beginning because I worried about the driving range. So they used another technology we call swapping batteries. What I have to do is I have to give the call to the battery swap stations only 30 minutes in advance, then get someone else to replace the battery for me. It only takes 5 to 7 minutes to replace the battery, and it's free. So although it took me roughly around 20 hours to drive from Beijing to Shanghai, and we swapped batteries 5 times during the trip. What I think is, if we switch to battery swapping technologies, these batteries can be charged centralized or decentralized. And also, the service providers can use this kind of capability or the capacity to provide service to our grid. So these are the new technologies. So what we can do from the UNSW Digital Future Institute. So as a researcher, we do fundamental research. Like we show here, we can do the power system modeling, we do power system control, we do renewable energy system, energy storage grid connections. And in the meanwhile, we do a lot of consulting and industry projects. We're working very close with developers and investors. In the last 5 years, we have already helped the 1 gigawatt synchronous generator and non-synchronous generator connected to the Australian transmission networks. And then in 2020, we are working with another developers and device manufacturers for another 700 megawatts generators to be connected to the grid. And then we'll also do hardware and the loop testings, making use of the fancy infrastructure we have at UNSW. And we have most of the power system simulation softwares that may be used by the industry. So what I mentioned is, what I summarize is, we can use PV to power the electric vehicle, and we can use electric vehicle to power the PV to increase the penetration of the PV in our grid. Thanks.